Hey guys, Mike here. So, a real quick disclaimer, there was a problem with the audio in this podcast, and by that I mean I forgot to put the microphone in front of my face for a majority of the podcast. Now, I did boost the volume up so you can hear me. There's just a lot of echo on my audio. Arian's audio, on the other hand, is perfectly fine. You can hear him very well. So don't let that stop you from listening in onto this great conversation I had with Arian Soltero. So once again, I apologize for the hiccup, and I promise I can almost guarantee it won't happen again in the future. Okay, enjoy the podcast. It's kind of like something I like to do with different things to see if people are paying attention. Like I added the Zoom link, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I put it in the calendar invite, and then you should have gotten an update just to see if people are paying attention. And
oh, really? Yeah. What is the alternative route?
Oh well, if let's say it's 10:04 right now, right? If by like 10:05 or 10:10 you still haven't come on, then I would just message you to make sure you got the link.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't have just said completely off. Fuck it.
I mean, I'm so used to it because with my coaching clients, I literally put in the link like for every one of the sessions. So I'm so used to like going in and pressing my own link that I just like assumed when I would do yours, it would be similar.
Yeah, I do these little, I don't know, maybe it's bad that I do it, but I feel like it's a good way just kind of to
weed out the dumbasses.
Yeah, basically. But I do it with people, not even just like for podcasting or anything, just with people in general, just to see if they're even worth, my time, using up my existence. Right?
I kind of feel that. I mean, I'm, working with people, you definitely get kind of just like, you have to be patient, but you're also like, you can't control your internal voice. So you're like, dude, are you a person? No, but I don't think you are.
I do it even like with friends, because I feel like with friends, there's definitely a spectrum with friends, right? Mm-hmm. You have your friends that are real close that you really rely on, and then you have your friends that if they're around, you'll hang out with them too, but you're not necessarily going to reach out, right? Yes, I'll do little tests like that too, where, for instance, recently, a person that I used to work with at the media agency I was at, she said she wanted to meet up with me and my wife and have lunch. And she said, after like 2 weeks, she'll be ready. And she said she'll get in touch. I said, okay, yeah. And I made sure not to get in touch with her. But I'll see if she'll be a person of her word and follow up. And she did.
Wow.
And hence, I hung out with her.
That's huge. I mean, there's so many people that hand out these, like, they have like a bag full of false promises. It's just like, oh, like, we'll for sure do that. Like, just here's one there, here's one there, here's one.
Yeah, exactly,
and then they're just like, they never circle back. So that's a pretty cool thing. I mean, I feel like, and I wouldn't even say that there's a huge correlation between like shitty person, false promise, but it tells you a little bit of like how, how was maybe our interaction? Was it one of those busy interactions where like they forgot about they even did this with me?
Oh, that's so interesting that you pointed that out, because I go right away to the shitty person interpretation, right? But you're right. It could just be like, maybe the chemistry between you and that other person is just not at that level. And they just, they were too polite to just be honest about it. Whereas I would be completely honest about it. It's like, well, you'll never hear from me again. Maybe I won't use those words. But that's kind of always something I've been known for, being upfront and honest about that. Because I just feel like it's always the nicer thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant surprise for sure. And I know people aren't used to it. I think like people just want to avoid confrontation, awkwardness, and all the above. So if that means like, not saying it how it is, then people prefer to do that, which is very odd. I think it's like a weird concept. But
how is it out there?
It's almost like the people that start swearing in front of you, like almost from the get-go. You like, most people are kind of drawn to that. It's like, oh, like feel kind of more relaxed. It's like, when in the absence of swear words or slang, you're almost just like, I feel like this is like I'm having to like do an audition right now. Like I'm auditioning. Yeah, that's
interesting. I guess that's something I've never paid attention to, because I am the kind of person that would just throw, the cuss words out, because it's just such a Like I know you grew up in the Bay Area. That's just such a part of our daily vernacular,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
For sure.
and I remember that's something my wife had to get used to because she came over here from the Philippines and she doesn't like swearing at all.
Hmm.
And then I'm just throwing it out basically every fifth word. And then it's just like, I mean, what can I say? It's just, that's how we talk over here. Like, fuck. It has so many uses, It's a
Yeah.
verb, it's a noun, it's an adjective,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's just such a part of our daily lingo. And I think there was a time when I was a stage actor at this point, I remember this hot girl said she doesn't like that she cusses so much because she feels like it doesn't represent the best of her.
Hmm.
And just because she was hot, I was like, oh yeah, 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 me too. I'll try to
Hmm.
do that.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's just to me. It's like, why am I doing that? I am who I am.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, I guess for job interviews, you don't want to be
Oh
throwing that
yeah. There's
around.
context for sure.
I mean, is that something you try to pay attention to when you're dealing with clients?
I think that I would say earlier on in the process, I refrain from being too much, like overly like just like careless with my language. Um, and also, there's a certain part of my training that's like you are a professional, so I understand that. And I think in the very beginning to have someone trust you is like I think in this industry, it's like the more wisdom you have and the more education you have in exercise science or training modalities or behavioral change, the you don't associate that with like it's almost like going to a doctor's appointment and having your doctor like start saying, oh yeah, like you got a fucking tear, dude. Like like so you think of this trainer in this gym as like someone who also wouldn't be like describing things like that. But some, clients that I've had for years, like occasionally I'll just be like, oh, like like you had a bad night, huh? A rough night, like like you'll start to kind of be that way, or like and it's also not the swear word always. I feel like it's kind of how you use it. Some people swear, and it's like you put some emphasis into that, like
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, that's funny. I never thought about it that way. Yeah, if a doctor would say, "Dude, your lungs are fucked up, man," it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like, I
You'd
think
be like, is this for real? Like,
yeah, that's a good point. You know, I mean, I remember I mentioned on yours and Miles' podcast, I was actually a personal trainer
mm-hmm.
like 5 or 6 years when I was living in the Philippines, and one of the frustrations for me when I was doing it was no one ever responded the same to the training. There's how people are supposed to respond according to the books,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the reality. At least that was my experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, have you found it to be the same, or maybe I just wasn't that good of a trainer?
No, I would 100% agree with that. I think that it's really tough. And that's where it gets into like, is it a reflection of the trainer? Is it not? I would say at this point in my career, having done this for like 8, 9 years, I mean, some like you'll have also the same client who for maybe a year is just slacking off. He's like, he has a lot going on in his life, a lot of stress, a lot of this, a lot of that. And if you were to take that snippet of that year with that client and someone was like, peer reviewing you or judging you on your service to others, they'd be like, well, it looks like, a couple of your clients aren't succeeding. Is that a reflection of your, training? And I would say that it's just like, it comes with like, we don't actually change anybody. It is always the person. I'm just like, I literally just coach. Like, I'm just like, I'm there to guide, prescribe exercises and things of that nature. But in the end, it's like if they don't do any of the work, it doesn't mean I'm a shitty trainer. It just means that they weren't able to get to the commitment stage.
How long did it
Um,
take you to come to that realization?
Probably more than it like longer than it should have. Because earlier in my career, I started with boxing and I had a boxing coach, and in that realm, it's like you're just used to like athletes are a whole different breed, especially in a poor sport like boxing, where like people don't have a lot of money, so there's not a lot of privilege that's around with boxing. It's like you're going in there to get knocked out, probably because you don't have enough money to do, I don't know, get an education or do other things. Like this is like the bottom of the barrel sports, you know? So you go, you meet with these people, and when you're boxing with them, when you're training with them, you adapt this like personality that it's like, oh, like who would be here if they weren't willing to put in the work, you know? It's like, it's almost like a given. It's like, of course you walked into this gym, that means you're committed, you know? But people in, you know, regular, I call everyone athletes in the end. It's just what part of your athletic career are you in at this stage. But if you want to call them like the non-athletic population, you know, it's not that. They walk into a gym, and sometimes they'll be going to a gym for 6 months and they're still like not really committed, where they're like, they'll go to a trainer for an hour and expect that 1 hour to undo the 22 other hours in that day. So they're like committed for an hour, and then they leave, and then they're like going back to the shitty lifestyle, sitting on the couch, doing this, doing that, drinking, eating too much, whatever that conflicts with their goals, right? I would say that, yeah, it just takes a while. You're just like, you start working with real people, and you're like, oh, fuck, like not everyone's really down to put in like all the work, come to training, eat what they're supposed to eat, drink what they're supposed to drink, for the result that they're craving. So
I don't think you mentioned that last time that you were into boxing. So you were a boxer for a little bit there?
yeah, and I think that's the hard part, honestly, about like you kind of mentioned it. Like I rarely have people, I think you said I rarely have people like come like as like a duo or like more than a couple people, because you want to have a true interaction with one other person. And I think on our podcast, it kind of, you know, it's hard to get to the nitty gritty stuff.
You could work it out with three. That's definitely, you can balance it out. But yeah, one-on-one's always preferable.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know if I don't remember if I mentioned or not, but yeah, I was a boxer initially. Before that, I did jiu-jitsu. So I've been into like the whole realm of martial arts, and I chose boxing after knowing all of the, you know, I guess you would call it the like UFC-esque type stuff. Although when I was doing it, UFC was like that. It was like right after it was bare knuckle, you know.
Okay,
so it was really, really, really brand new.
Yeah,
like it wasn't as popular as it is now.
They were struggling at that point.
Yeah, it didn't have the money that it has now.
No, not at all.
So that's when I was doing jiu-jitsu. I was like early high school. I just had a friend that like, you know, I was in a good neighborhood, but in a shitty, like low income housing with my family. So although it was Palo Alto, it was like I lived with a lot, you know, around a lot of people that were like in East Palo Alto. So I had my neighbor, Angelo, was like one day, you know, I was in high school, I think maybe like a sophomore. And he knew I was kind of getting into working out and all this stuff. That's kind of when you like approach maybe like, should I be getting in shape so I can show off to the girls?
Yeah,
like I need to look better.
Yeah. Like, you know, you had that plan every summer. All right, I'm going to work out like crazy in the summer, come back the next school year.
Yeah.
All the girls are going to be impressed.
Exactly. So those are the kind of the thoughts, you know, and I'm very honest with it, because I think a lot of trainers are like, oh, you know, I wanted to change my life. And for me, it was like, no, it was really about I wanted to physically look like ripped, you know, every young guy wants a six pack.
That's what every guy, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That and then,
so
you know, show off for the guys too, right? In the locker room, be the alpha, right?
Yeah, exactly. You like, everyone's, you know, like going to the weight room, going to the pool, and when it's hot, and so you're just like, you want to compete in a way.
Exactly.
You know? So yeah, it started with, you know, it was for vanity. And then he was like, oh, like, you know, if you want to like train, like I just remember like him dropping that like label of just like, oh, if you want to come train, like you're welcome, you know, like to come on, and we'll go to this gym that I go in the back of EPA.
Jesus, what an amazing offer.
Right. You know, and so I actually rejected it quite a few times, because at first you don't, like I said, UFC wasn't this thing you watched on the weekends. It was like, oh, like you do like jujitsu, you do like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's like mixed martial arts, MMA. And so that's what it was referred to mainly as MMA instead of like UFC stuff. So I was like, okay, like, you know, I don't know, like I wrestled, I kind of, you know, did a little bit of wrestling like with my friends and like wrestling in middle school, but like it wasn't like something I was crazy into. So I was like, oh, like, yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try it. But I rejected the first couple offers. And then finally I was like, fuck it, you know, let's just go.
There you go. You're playing hard to get. Smart of you.
And yeah, so I went along, and I remember my first training session, like doing jujitsu and everything, was just brutal. We also like did weight training right before, which is never a fucking good
Yeah,
idea.
no.
And yeah, so it like just sprung me into that world, and then I came out the other side, like starting to migrate towards the striking. And I met my boxing coach, who was my mentor at that time. He's also been on the podcast with me and Miles.
Well, you
Or
had
Miles and
you
I.
had a mentor at that age?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what it was, just like I was just like drawn to that. I don't know. Like I think at that time, I kind of just like, yeah, I don't know what it was. Like, obviously I had a great father, but like, he was, this mentor was like almost like another father figure for me. Like kind of introducing me to maybe my dad was very like rule based, black and white. This guy was more like open minded, just like these are the, like it was kind of a very like, I don't know, like more of a flow way of thinking. And I kind of enjoyed it. It was something that I didn't have in my
How did
household.
this even happen? This whole mentor relationship?
I just met the guy at a gym. Like we would gym hop. So the gym that I initially went to with my neighbor was like, it was like a real backyard gym. Like we were in an abandoned, like warehouse, and it was technically like to East Palo Alto. It wasn't. It was like in a fire hazard like place where like technically you weren't allowed to be in there. So if the fire marshal knew we were training in there, he would have come and shut it down. And our jujitsu and trainer was also illegally there from Brazil. Like it was the whole
Oh
fucking
wow!
yeah.
That has the makings of a movie.
Like
So you guys are training
exactly
for Mortal Kombat, so
right, dude. It's like the raw like beginnings.
uh,
So it was a real like weird start. Like the way that I got into it wasn't like, oh, my son wants to do, karate. It was like I literally just like there's like 18 other dudes, like half of them are like Latin based, like black, like there's no white kids in there like getting dropped off for class, like it is like straight up just like, oh, like you heard about it and so you're here now. There's mats on the ground, that we have like these old lockers, and we're like training with this guy that's illegally here from Brazil. Like he's one of the original like dojo guys in there.
Man,
So it
what
was
a
cool.
privilege!
Yeah, it was a privilege for sure. I don't always like, I don't reflect on it enough, but it's nice when I get to talk about it in these situations, because I really like, was privileged to have that foundation, and it taught me a lot. Like like I said, it wasn't like paying for this like membership thing. It was like, no, you're when you're here, you're working hard or you're out. Like that's it. Like we're not like, you're not paying us. It's free training, but we're expecting you to not take it for granted, kind of thing.
How long did you do that?
I did it all throughout high school. So I did it from like
Oh,
sophomore,
that's
junior,
amazing!
senior. Yeah. So it was weird because all my friends were like doing football, like you want to get the varsity jacket and you want to get the fucking this and that and like show off on a Friday night and run routes. And I was just not that. I was like, dude, like, so every day after school, and sometimes I even took my brothers when they were willing, because they were a lot younger than me. But yeah, like after school, I would literally, like sophomore year was when around the time I got my license. So I would drive there or go with Angelo, who also went to Pali, the high school I went to. And so we would just like 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. whenever we got out of class, we just drove over there, trained till 6, 7 p.m., came home, did homework, or I usually didn't do homework. I was a pretty terrible student, but
Well, homework in general, I'm morally against it. I just
yeah.
Man, did you ever get cauliflower ear?
I didn't, thank the fucking Lord, because people tell me quite a bit, or my fiance likes to tell me I have a pretty face, and she's glad I didn't ruin it. So I'm good, and I think that maybe I got out at the right time, or I transitioned to striking at the right time and got more into boxing.
Did you wear ear guards at all when you were doing?
No, never. Like
Really?
I didn't even know about that. Like that byproduct of training. I think it happens a lot more with wrestlers, I want to say.
I don't know. Every BJJ person I've seen that's been doing it for a few years has it.
I think it just happens. Yeah, it's just like, it's very, like the more time you spend on the mat, and maybe I don't know why I came out with perfect ears, but that's another privilege.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a blessing. It's honestly the one thing that's kept me from doing BJJ all these years. I've done a lot of martial arts, but it's like there's a certain level of vanity that I just can't get over. It's like, I don't want those fucked up ears.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. So I'm thankful that none of the bad stuff happened. I got some injuries, but not like physically, that, you could recognize without, clothes on.
Yeah, that's your
But,
money maker, right? There you go.
exactly.
Well,
But
wouldn't you
yeah,
say
so,
so that like part of like I found it for me when I was a personal trainer is part of it for me was the packaging.
mhm.
Was the way I looked at self, and that was part of how I got my clients. Is I looked like I was on top of it.
Yeah. I think that that's a huge part of it, it's just like, yeah, kind of like, you like feel, look the part. And I've, like, a lot of my colleagues along the way, or not a lot, I want to say, but I've had, you run into those trainers that don't, you know, that like that obviously don't maybe practice what they preach. And while there's a line, I think that, like, you don't have to be like absolutely just like jacked and just like whatever. I think that, like, healthy lifestyle is like more than just like looking good, obviously. But yeah, that's a huge part of training in general. Is like people are like, oh, like if I don't look like that, then how am I gonna do this stuff? Or why are they gonna buy into this?
Yeah, I mean, have in your I mean, you've been at it a lot longer than I was. I think I trained for maybe 3.5 years. Do you find that it's? I mean, that's something like your clients do care about. Did they ever confess like, oh, you know what? When I saw you that you're in really good shape, I really knew that okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He practices what he preaches, or it never even comes up at all.
I would say it's very passive if it comes up, because people don't want to be like like really superficial about that. But I think it's just one of those things that, like, it's in the back of your mind when you're searching for someone that does something. It's almost like, fuck, I'm trying to find like another industry where like it's relatable, but yeah,
Well,
it's one of those things.
I'll tell you, like maybe it's something like this. Like for a while in my early 20s, I was doing wushu. If people don't know what
Mm-hmm.
wushu is basically what you saw in the Matrix.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all wushu. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of like actual applying it to a fight, it's not applicable at all. It's really just fancy stuff that looks great.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I feel like every guy who does martial arts, at a certain point, a lot of guys, you just want to do the fancy stuff that you see in the movies, right? That's kind of the
Yeah.
fantasy. So I was doing that, and then I was traveling somewhere, and I didn't want to stop training. I can't remember where I was traveling to, but somewhere in the States. So I was looking up gyms or wushu studios that I could train at. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would see these fat white guys dressed up in Shaolin outfits.
Mm-hmm.
They were the only trainers around. And it's like my immediate judgment was they can't possibly know as much as, an Asian dude. Like a
Yeah.
skinny Asian dude teaching wushu. It's just because it was part of the packaging for me. Like this fat white dude in these Shaolin outfits. Like how seriously could this guy be taken? And how good could
Yeah.
he be? The Asian,
Yeah, that's very, very true.
the skinny Asian guy's gotta know more than this guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I
So it's
guess I
kind of
would
like
say it was the
that.
same. It was probably the same way with like jujitsu. Like, I didn't get to pick my jujitsu trainer, but you damn well, if you worked now, you probably would be more drawn to like a Gracie jujitsu gym with like Brazilians in there versus like a bunch of like you're saying, like just like counterfeits, that it's just like, oh, you don't really fit the part for me, so I'm not in total belief that like you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
And
well,
we have those
if they
associations.
if they were in great shape, I wouldn't like when it comes to BJJ, I wouldn't mind so much
Hmm.
if they're white or whatever, because I
Hmm.
know, especially if they had cauliflower ear too. You have the
You're
telltale
like, you
signs.
know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing.
exactly. And if they're in great shape, because BJJ, that's a fucking great workout, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, it's really fun.
really
Yeah, low impact. I mean,
yeah,
depending.
yeah. It's kind of, but it's and the conditioning for that, it's grueling. It's hard to find a dude that's been doing it for a while who doesn't have a six pack.
Yeah, yeah. Or isn't just insanely strong. Even, it's crazy. A lot of the guy who taught me everything, like physically, yeah, he wasn't out of shape looking, but damn, was he strong. Like, I remember trying to put like some of these guys who have been training for this long and now are at a level where they're giving out these belts, or these notches on people's belts. They're like, I mean, I remember trying to like put my jiu-jitsu trainer in like a chokehold for like 20 minutes, and he would stand up with me literally wrapped around his neck, like trying to like put him in a guillotine or something. And he's just like looking around. He's like, this is the type of strength you can build. Like he's like almost like giving a seminar with me on his back, you know, like
yeah, you're a backpack that he's got on basically.
exactly. And you can tell that it's like this training is rigorous, but it makes you so resilient.
So then how did you transition over to boxing from there?
I think I mentioned we would gym hop because we had a jiu-jitsu trainer, which was our foundation, which is a great foundation, but we didn't have striking, we didn't have kickboxing or kicking. We didn't have a number of things. Wrestling is also different from jiu-jitsu, so sometimes we would go to wrestling places to learn like more takedown type movements. But so we would gym hop and go like to this gym for boxing, and then we go to this gym for kicking, and then we go to this gym for that, to kind of like get the things we were missing on weekends or whatever, or like random evenings. So we went to this gym, Undisputed Boxing Gym, for boxing. And that's where I met this guy, Michael Basil, who was a boxing coach, a strength and conditioning guy. And he worked with like a lot of the like more like famous athletes out of that gym, like the professional boxers, like someone like Nonito Donaire.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So Nonito was like this guy's like big boxer. Like these were his foundational like original trainers, besides his father, of course, Nonito Senior or Donaire Senior. And so I knew this guy was reputable. He obviously knew what he was doing. It was kind of like a cross between a nitty gritty gym and like a come take classes at 9:30, soccer mom type of place. So it was like half and half. And the back end was like all the nitty gritty stuff where like you had the rolling on the mats and the boxing ring and all that stuff. And the front had the classes. And I just remember just being like totally like blown away by this place. And we would go like 2 times a week. And then I started to gravitate closer to this boxing coach. And then eventually I didn't want to gym hop anymore. I was like, dude, I think I like boxing. Like I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 3-4 years at this point. And I think I really want to commit to boxing and want to, not leave jiu-jitsu behind, but I'm kind of like, I think I've grown a lot from it, but I'm ready to learn like more about striking. I like this part of it. So he kind of took me in, and I basically like would do random things for the gym to like have a gym membership for free. Cause before there was a fighter's membership where you had to pay like $50-$60 a month. And because I was willing to show up so much and like I really wanted to earn my way in there and I didn't really have the money to do it, he was like, why don't you just do some random stuff? You can help with parking and do this shit and maybe help clean or whatever. And that'll be your membership. So
man, you were really quite fortunate.
Yeah.
With your training, man.
I really was. It was really nice. And I think I was just willing. I was always a kid who was willing to work really hard. And I knew I didn't have a lot of money. My family didn't have a lot of money. And they kind of knew that. They knew I was brought in with the people that were in that category too, that didn't come from, like huge beginnings. So they were also in that mental process of just like, like your parents aren't dropping you off here. Like you're getting here somehow, whether it's dropped off from a friend or something. So you're willing to put in the work, and we know that you're kind of worth it in that way, maybe. So I kind of fit into that, like squeeze into that little space. And yeah, I was very thankful that I was really given a lot of like complimentary, like free training and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to grow up.
Yeah. And it's just weird because I never would have told you if you asked me before that point, like growing up until I started doing that stuff, that like I even wanted to do that.
Why?
Like I wasn't like a kid that grew up like wanting to fight or box, so it was, it just kind of happened. It was a weird transition that just happened. Like I said, it happened because I really just wanted to get in shape. And then I started to love like the process. And then I was like, I want to get better at like this hold or this choke or this transition. And then it became like, it really becomes a craft when you get into it. Which is cool because like you said, and other people say it all the time, it's like, I mean, if you're working out, it's great. Like we know it's good for your health and everything and it's awesome. But like, if you don't enjoy training or working or lifting iron or lifting weights, like what's another way to work out where it feels like it's play, it's a game. I'm trying to like get this person before he gets me, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's really what I miss about doing Muay Thai, because Muay Thai for me was that was like just the ultimate workout
Mm-hmm.
method. It was just so much fun, and I was yeah, did it for quite a while. There's just I don't have any cartilage left in my right knee, so like that's what's interesting is that part of my life is kind of over now.
Mm-hmm.
Martial arts thing. That was a big part of who I was. That's kind of trying to kind of reinvent myself. I just have to accept it. It's just my body's breaking down. I'm 40 years old
Mm-hmm.
at this point, and all that training comes at a price. You do it for long enough, man, the wear and tear. Yeah, because I don't know about
Definitely.
you. Like when you were young, did you put any thought at all into recovery and
No.
longevity, mobility? No, right? You just see
Hell
balls to
no.
the wall,
Yeah.
right? And,
Yeah.
yeah, push the pedal to the metal, and that's all. That's what you're supposed to do. And
Exactly.
yeah, I guess I paid the price for it.
Yeah. And I have a lot of injuries to is like I think of them as like receipts for all that.
Yeah, basically,
Um,
yeah, essentially, yeah. That's it. You don't get out of it for free. The training
yeah.
made it free, but yeah, your body pays the price.
Exactly. So, and that's what, if you want to think about one thing leading to another, that's where boxing met training, I guess, for me. And then becoming a coach was literally because I was going through like injuries from beating up my body, as a sophomore in high school to like getting into college and being like, okay, my knee doesn't feel too good, or my wrist doesn't feel too good, or my foot or ankle don't feel too good. So that's what like led into like, you know what, I'm helping myself through like an injury or injuries. And then other people kind of wondered about it. Like, oh, you've done this training, done this, and you had a knee thing and you came back from that. And then you start to like, somewhere in that process, you start helping other people through shit that you've been through.
Did you ever go
Um,
so far as to compete?
I competed in jiu-jitsu and MMA. So I did jiu-jitsu tournaments and I competed in like at they were MMA like tournaments or fights that happen on the weekends. They would happen on like Friday, Saturday in like Richmond or like random areas. But I never did an official boxing bout. All of my boxing was like done in the gym and sparring. So I remember getting my registering as a for my boxing license, and maybe like as I was training for the first amateur fight I would have had, I tore my meniscus, which is funny that yeah. So the fucked up thing about it was that I tore my meniscus not training, but it was during training. So I don't know if my body was just worn down. So when I was messing around with my buddies, like it just happened, or what, it was a combination effect maybe, but like it was just annoying that I had to show up to training and be like, hey, I can't fight because I tore my shit, like I heard a pop last night and I'm fucked. And so yeah, I never got to it. Kind of it I don't know if it like I said, I don't think everything happens for a reason. I think that's a little kind of a naive way to think about life sometimes, and a little like overly playful. But I do think that it gave me an opportunity to either come back from an injury like a lot of athletes do and keep trying to like earn their way into their sport and keep fighting for it, or it leads you down a different route and you stop short knowing that you put in a lot of time and you did the things that you did and you learned great lessons. And then, you don't have to leave the sport officially, but I just decided to never come back after the injury and compete. So I still sparred around. I still, messed around with the amateurs and played around with the pros and still, I was in the gym every day, but I eventually just like got into training and then into coaching instead of into training and back into boxing.
Wow, so there was a conscious decision you made while you were injured.
Yeah, I remember showing up every day too with my fucking crutches and going in the boxing ring and like doing stuff that was only upper body, doing a lot of crunches, a lot of sit-ups and all the generic stuff. And then I would slowly just try to do like isometric drills and like do bobbing and weaving and stuff that didn't require me to step too often because it would aggravate my knee. And then one day I was getting back to, doing everything, and I was shadow boxing, doing all the above, training with the amateurs again. And then I made a conscious decision before my coach asked if I wanted to compete again or get into like trying to train for another fight. I was like, you know what? I think I just like training. Like at this point, I like the way I feel when I train. I definitely don't want to stop it. I don't want to be one of those athletes that like gives up, can't identify himself as a boxer anymore, and then just stops training altogether and like, unfolds, gets fat, whatever, So I was like, I don't want to stop training, but I also don't think I want to fight. And then eventually I started working for the gym as a coach, and I never looked back. I was just like, yeah, because I knew I loved being around boxing. I just knew I didn't want to do it as a career.
Wow, I mean, I guess it makes sense that you're a trainer now. I mean, your formative years were all spent in a gym of some sort.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it's funny because I didn't tell my friends about it at the time, my high school buddies, because at that time it's like, like you had friends that maybe at a young age they did karate, because karate was around for a while. But it was like those like kind of corny like studios.
Oh yeah,
Most of them were.
McDojo or
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you kind of just like you did it as a kid, and then you probably stopped, and maybe you got good at it or whatever. But like fighting skills weren't something you showed off at school, or at my school. It wasn't like, it's not, I'm doing MMA training. It's like you didn't want to boast about that. So I did a lot of it like under in a closet or behind the curtain. I was just like, I did it after school or before school or on the weekends, and then I just like,
Weren't they ever curious, like, where are you going all around all this time, like after school, hanging out?
yeah, there were I remember a couple moments because I was dating this girl at this time that went to the like rival school in Palo Alto called Gun High School, and her friends were maybe had some buddies also at that school that like happened to pick someone up at that backyard like warehouse gym that I was training at, and this was like maybe a couple years into it when I was already doing it formally, and they were like, hey, like I think I picked someone up from the gym or whatever, and they started talking about who they were training with, and they said that you beat up this kid Kazi or whatever, and I was like name dropped in some way, and I was like I was kind of like shocked by it, and because at that point I was like, both of those worlds didn't mix for me, so I never tried to mix them, and it was a nice like clean cut, just like I went from here to here, and these things didn't really like merge, and the friends that I made in the gym weren't the friends that I had at school.
Oh, I'm the exact same way. I don't mix those circles at all.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like, like it eventually came out, but it was like maybe when I was a senior, I'd already been doing it for like 3 years. So it was kind of like, I didn't like announce it, but people kind of like heard, and it was just like, oh, I think he must do like training or something. But I just
Have
didn't
that
talk about it.
effect of like certain guys all of a sudden wanted to challenge you? Oh, you think you're a fucking badass with your MMA?
Yeah, I mean, luckily it wasn't like that, and like I said, the stories about me that maybe emerged from the warehouse, because I'm a small guy. I'm like 5'5", 5'6" on a good day, so I wasn't like this, big in charge 6'5" football player dude or MMA guy. So I think it was a little unexpected, and so when these stories came about, they were like kind of like struck. Because I was like going up against people that were in my weight class, because I was like, I wasn't the most in shape. Like I said, I got into it to get in shape. So I was maybe like a $145, $150, but I was 5'5", 5'4". So
Yeah, that's a good amount of weight for that height, actually.
yeah, it was like, I wouldn't say it's like obese, but like you have some weight on you. I'm not the skinniest, like I'm not a stick figure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I got into it to get in shape, and I didn't look the part, but I went up against guys that were that size, but 5'9", 5'11", like 150. So most of the people that I fought, if I didn't cut weight, or did jiu-jitsu with, or did tournaments with, like if I was in that weight class and I didn't cut, I was going up against like pretty tall guys. So I was used to like my trainer used to tell me, like, it doesn't matter that you're 5'5" and he's 6'2", because on the floor you're the same fucking height.
Yeah, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it doesn't really matter as much.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
like, as long as he's on the floor with you, yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So I had that mentality, but luckily I didn't have a lot of run-ins outside, like, high school parties and stuff. I'm also not I don't know if you kind of maybe observed this before on the podcast, but I'm not like the most like outgoing, like boasting, like egotistical person, like kind of like loud and showy with my shit. So the same way I hid that I did MMA is the same way I didn't show off and fight people at like random gatherings, and just be like, oh, I'm the dude, I know how to fight now. I'm going to show you that I know how to fight.
Yeah.
So if anything, I was always refraining. I was always like, is there some way we can calm this down? Because high school
Well, that's
kids,
very smart of you, honestly. I mean, is that something like your teacher, your BJJ like instructor, like instilled in you guys? Hey, you shouldn't be using this shit outside. Okay, this
yeah,
is
it totally was. And I think a lot of reasonable coaches that are like respectful, because in that type of craft, it is about respect. The origin of these martial arts, it's like we don't give you these tools so you can go out and create harm. It's to create peace when you're in danger, right?
yeah, that's great. That's funny. I remember because I don't know if I mentioned it when I did your guys' podcast, but I spent 7 years of my 20s in the Philippines.
You mentioned
Yeah,
maybe briefly that you were in the
yeah,
Philippines, but I didn't know it was 7 years.
yeah.
That's
So
quite a while.
and a lot of those years I was training in Filipino martial arts. Basically, if people don't know what that is,
Mm-hmm.
it's all the Jason Bourne stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is. And I got to the point where actually I was very fortunate there too, because I would say I think the first 6 months to a year of me training that, it was just me and the master one on one.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, no, it's funny, like in the Philippines, like the Filipino martial arts is not really that well regarded or
Mm-hmm.
well respected, whereas internationally it's very well respected and
Yeah.
highly regarded, especially once like Jason Bourne movies started coming out. A lot of the action movies
Yeah.
kind of like gravitated towards more Jason Bourne type stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
I think, and that was all Filipino martial arts. So, but back then when I was training, I think that was 2000. This has been 2004, 2005. Yeah, and the Filipinos weren't really that interested in it. So I was the only
Mm-hmm.
student there in the class, and hey, I was. So the needless to say, my progression like went up like a rocket because it was just
Mm-hmm.
me and that grandmaster, like one on one. Anyway, it got to the point where me and this other guy took over the classes because he moved over to Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and because Israelis, I don't know if you've ever met like Israelis, they love fighting.
Yeah. I
They
think
love
it's Krav Maga.
Yeah. But they just love studying like fighting in general. So usually,
Mm-hmm.
because over there, they're guys, they're required to do military service, right? Women 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
guys 2 years, and then after that, most of them travel for a year, and a lot of them look to travel in places where they can train other martial arts they really respect. So we've met a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Israelis in the Philippines, and the grandmaster that I trained with, he ended up meeting his wife that way. She's Israeli, so he moved over there and he left the school in care of me and my other friend Brando. And the point of this long story was, I think maybe 6 months into us like training people, he kind of brought up, you know what, we never really talk about the responsibility of knowing the shit that we know and that we're teaching. It's like, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing this to people.
Mm-hmm.
This is really more so if you ever get into a rough situation, at least you'll know enough to maybe defend yourself and run away.
Mm-hmm.
But we never brought that up. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like, oh, that's kind of irresponsible if you really think about it. Because we were teaching things like knife fighting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then never mentioned any responsibility and shouldn't use
Yeah.
this shit. Yeah, so,
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, to be completely fair, I feel like a lot of the American like fighting sports. I mean, I walked in that boxing gym. I don't think I ever heard once from my boxing coaches the same concept that I heard from the martial art coaches. Which is that like, first of all, before I teach you these things, there's rules to them. There's these like guidelines. And in boxing, it's like, yeah, you meet a lot of boxers that like box in the gym and outside of the gym. It's just, it's almost like unsaid. It's like a lot of angry people walk in there and then they just sharpen their skills and then there's still angry people on the streets. And it's sad, but that's the way it is.
Did it never? I mean, because did you watch a lot of UFC when you were training?
No, I never. Even to this day, like I do it for maybe a social, like it's a social thing. If I'm
Uh-huh.
invited to like watch a fight, but I I don't watch a lot of fights. Like I don't watch a lot of boxing fights. I don't unless they're like old fights, like these classics that are just like they're. It's almost like very memorable. Um, then yeah, but like I don't watch a lot of like these new fights. I mean, I think also it's a lot about like money these days, and maybe it always was, but yeah, I don't watch. I didn't watch UFC when I was training for it, and I don't really watch it too much now.
Because to me, as soon as I saw those first UFCs, I'm talking about, Hoist Gracie winning like the first two or three.
Yeah,
I could never look at boxing the same way after that. And the more I got into watching UFC, it's just, yeah, for some, I just never could. A lot of the mystique about boxing or, the respect I have for it just kind of went out the window because you're ignoring the complete other half of the body and you see what happens to boxers against MMA fighters. It's like, I mean, I absolutely, don't get me wrong, I absolutely respect the dedication. And if I was to step into a boxing ring and fight under boxing rules, I would get fucked up. No doubt about it, because that's not my world. But so that never bothered you? Because you were dipping your toes into the MMA world.
yeah. Sorry. So the question was, did going to boxing from MMA bother me?
No, because you're ignoring the other half, you're the lower part of the body. Like when it comes to a real fight or
Yeah.
even MMA, you're like you just focus on boxing. It's kind of like detrimental, and you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it can go. I mean, being surrounded by these guys for so long, like you started to realize that, like, you know, I would say, and I don't know. I would like to think that this is a collective thought in mixed martial arts or across like the UFC platform. But I would say that if you kind of what you're saying is that if you are a phenomenal boxer walking into an MMA ring and don't know a lot about the ground versus a phenomenal ground game person mixed like like maybe like jujitsu, BJJ, grappling, wrestling, all the ground like sports, and not knowing a lot about striking, you would probably be more well off with the latter, being able to know your way on the floor versus know your way striking. Um, and but I also found myself in situations where like I only did jujitsu and only did ground based stuff for 3-4 years, and then when I walked into, every time I walked into a ring or did a fight, like that's what I gravitated towards. And although like yeah, you can win a fight like that, and I did. You also knew if someone tried to catch you, try to stay up with you, you weren't going to do that. But yeah, I do believe that like you can make your way through much more like it's much more of a safety net to know the ground versus know just standing up, because you're right, there is a whole half of your body that boxers are ignoring. And in their sport, great, like it works, like you don't have to worry, no one's going to take you down in a boxing fight. But in an MMA fight and you go in boxing, you're sorely mistaken. So
Like, did you watch? Were you into Floyd versus Conor McGregor? The whole build up
yeah,
to that, you watch that. And,
yeah.
they had those press conferences where they would talk a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and Floyd was talking this. Floyd is the master marketer, right? I mean, he's Money Mayweather for a reason. I think he's brilliant. He creates himself as the villain, so people would pay just to see him get his ass kicked. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, he never gets his ass kicked because he's the best defensive fighter
Yeah.
ever. But I remember he was talking shit one time during one press conference, and I think Connor just said, "The only reason you're talking shit is because if this is a real fight, I would fucking kill you."
Yeah.
And then Floyd couldn't say anything to that. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, you was true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like,
Within his realm, like obviously, yeah, it's like great. You're good at it because you know the rules and you play by them.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
your
in a
world,
fight
that's
where
your
there's no
kingdom.
rules, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like that's like for me, I could just never view boxing the same. That being said, I still enjoy watching someone like a Canelo Alvarez who's just putting
Oh
people
yeah,
out, or
totally dominating.
yeah, or
Like his fights are
Dion,
really also really exciting. He's an exciting guy to watch.
yeah, or like Vasily Lomachenko, the
Hmm.
MMA that I could like. I still appreciate it. I know they could still probably kick my ass because they're just on that level. I mean, that's
Hmm.
not saying much, you know. The bar's not exactly high if I'm saying they can kick my ass, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not a litmus test for seeing how badass they are. But yeah, I just for that's why I could never just. That's why I gravitated towards Muay Thai instead of
Hmm.
boxing.
Yeah.
At least there, you know, you're learning elbows, you're learning knees, you know, you have
Yeah.
to deal with kicks. There's even clinching, which is not, you know, it's not wrestling, but it's still, you know, I'm not gonna get cauliflower ear from clinching.
That's very
So,
true.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's that vanity thing. I just couldn't get over it.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I had like I said, I had friends that wrestled in high school and ended up with that. Like they didn't even do MMA. They just did wrestling, just competing in wrestling, going to states, and doing that. And ended up with a little bit of it, and once you let it harden, it doesn't go away. So it's like it's permanent. So yeah, it's I guess unfortunate, but it happens, and yeah.
Since fitness and training is a big part of your life, is your fiance like heavily really into fitness too? Is that something that's important to you?
Funny enough, I met her at that boxing gym I was talking about that I eventually worked at.
Ah,
She, so I mean, that's a whole nother story on its own.
let's
Um,
hear it. If you're willing
but
to tell it.
yeah, so in high school, her, I didn't realize. So I had this friend. He was a junior. I was a senior at the time. So we became really good friends when I was a senior, kind of like exiting high school. And I would go to his house all the time, and we'd like spend the night, like whatever, like sneak out, do all that stuff, go out late, and I just this particular friends, like sometimes you meet people maybe in high school, maybe throughout your life where they're just not super. Maybe either things don't come up or they're just intentionally private. So this particular friend was just like not super, I didn't really know a lot. I didn't know a lot about his family. I just hung out with him a lot. Um, and, and so I was friends with this dude, eventually like we, didn't really have a falling out, but we just didn't talk for a little while. That was when I was maybe getting more into training and everything. And then, years and years and years have passed, and I meet, my fiance, who's my fiance now. I meet her at the gym, and I'm working at the gym at that time. So I see her last name on the screen, and I'm like, Waby. I'm like, what the fuck? And so I put two and two together that, uh, and maybe even before then, maybe at a party or something, I think. But basically, the whole idea was that I didn't realize that I was best friends with her brother
No way.
in high school,
No way.
and it happened to be that this was his little sister that I just never met. Every time I was at, I think their parents were separated, so I was always at the dad's house, and she was always at the mom's house or something like that, and it just never came up. I remember when I met his older sister, I was like, "You have a sister?" And he was like, "Yep," and nothing after that. And so I was just like, all right, I obviously like that's fine. Like you don't seem very open about it. And then it never came up that he also had a younger sister. So which for good reason, I can imagine. Yeah, so I ended up like obviously I hit it off with, I know your older brother. Like I was like really like good friends with him in high school. And then she was like, oh, whatever. And I could tell she was kind of standoffish. She was one of those girls that like doesn't go in to like talk to people for sure. Like hat down, fucking down, like going in there for business and getting the fuck out of
I
there
respect
ASAP.
that actually. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Versus like, like you go in and you see, you just see that they might not they might reject you, but they look like they're inviting conversation. There's like two different types of like people that are training. She was like, I'm going in, taking my boxing class and leaving. And so I would try to start a conversation. I'm also not a very like outward person to begin with.
I would
So,
never know it honestly. 'Cause
which I'm glad.
Because
you know,
between you and Miles, when I did your podcast, you were definitely more awkward than Miles was. And
yeah,
I knew
and
Miles.
yeah,
That's
that's
like,
very true. And to be fair, I think that, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a spectrum, and I've learned. I think it's something you can also train. You know, like in my industry, like you can't be super quiet. Like you're meeting with random strangers all the time to help them transform their body. So to a certain degree, I've come out of my shell. But like in my own life, I am very like when I'm at the gym, when I'm walking in a grocery store, when I'm doing this, doing that, I am not like I probably use my voice like the least amount of possible. Like, and so yeah, so it was hard for me to kind of break the ice with her, and I don't know how it happened. I think I eventually like I think we were invited over somewhere. Something happened, and so I ended up in close quarters with her, and so we got to talking in this situation, and we just hit it off and became like really good friends. Although like initially, I was thinking like, God, she's a beautiful girl. Like she's a beautiful woman. So
so be
I
honest,
I
when
kind
you
of
guys were friends, you secretly
yeah.
have the intentions like, okay, I really do want to go out with her.
Yeah. Well, if that's the short story, but the long story is that we didn't date for a long time, and I even saw her. I was friends with her while she was dating other people.
Wow.
Yeah. So
How
it
did that
didn't.
feel?
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, I think you just get used. You maybe put that idea on the back burner, and then you kind of just like you're like, oh, like we're actually friends. Like, cool, whatever. And then I ended up I dated her. I'm trying to remember correctly, and I think it all kind of happened at the same time. But I basically became friends with her, and then also was interested. I became kind of interested in her friend because she was already dating my friend, or someone I knew from the gym.
Oh wow, you guys are all mixed up.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that happens in a gym when I have no idea. It kind of felt that way though. So I was dating her friend or interested in her friend because I kind of knew that I figured out that we were going to be friends, and she was also interested in someone else at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm not that
Yeah.
guy either. That's like gonna like
The
try to
bomb.
like knock some guy out of his spot. Like I'm not Mr. Steal Your Girl. Like I'm just not that guy. So I was like, if I know someone is interested in someone else or seeing someone else or whatever, I'm like, okay, they're off limits. That's
Yeah,
fine.
there's plenty of fish in the sea, you know?
Exactly. I'm more respectful when it comes to that shit.
And nothing
So
good can come out of that. Of
no,
being a
not at
guy
all.
being obstinate, can't take a hit. Nothing that
Exactly. It's
never
just
works
like,
out.
yeah. So I knew that lane was not available. So I was like, okay. And then I met her friend or her two friends, and I kind of became interested in her friend, one of them, and then we all like kind of were just close, like close group of friends that all hung out. And then I started dating her friend, and then fast forward, her friend moves away. She went to physical therapy school, and it just wasn't going to work out in terms of long-term stuff. And then it just like overnight, literally, and I literally could not mean overnight more overnight than in this way. It just happened. and
What do you mean it just
and
happened?
we just like we went out together. I mean, like, and it just like occurred. Like we just like got some drinks. We're out for a birthday party, group of friends, whatever. And it just like we just one thing led to another. So
So she wasn't with her boyfriend anymore at that point.
no. Yeah, this was like I said, I used fast forward as like a
Okay.
literal way to like jump forward. But she was out of that relationship officially. I was out of this relationship officially. So we're both officially single, but also telling each other that we're still friends. But that night, obviously, it didn't apply. And then it, like I said, it wasn't. This is probably the most not clean cut relationship I've ever had, and somehow we ended up together. It was really rocky, and there was points when we didn't talk, and this and that. And she dated other people even after the fact when we got together. But we ended up like coming back and trying it and seeing if it would work, and it stuck.
And now you
And
guys are engaged.
and now we're engaged. Yeah. So that story is never really easy to tell to
No,
friends or
yeah,
people that
yeah, I
ask
can
about it.
tell. There's quite a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot. We have we share a lot of friends, and my mentor, my boxing mentor, being one of them, and he knows both of us pretty well, or really well. And he is like, whenever we used to bring it up, like, like, God, we've been through so much shit, like, how do you think this would really work? Like, we just been through like literally everything, and he. I remember just used to flip it and be like, that's exactly why it might work, because you've fucking been through everything. Like most relationships, you you get together, you're married, whatever, then you get to a hard place, between a hard place and a rock, and you're like, fuck, like I bail, I'm out, So he was like, maybe this way you go in with a lot of experience, that you've been through a lot of ups and downs, and you're still figuring it out, but you know that you've been through a lot together. So yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that definitely. Just with me and my wife, we went through some serious rough patches, and definitely you come out stronger at the end if you do come out of it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's kind of like the proving grounds for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I definitely attest to that. So, do you talk to her brother at all still at this point?
Yeah. And, like I said, I could spend probably like, this could be a weekend seminar just
Yeah,
explaining
this
this
is like
whole
a
fucking thing.
soap opera, basically.
But yeah, I mean, I'm great friends with him now. And that's my perspective. Hopefully he thinks the same way. But yeah, but it was definitely a little rough. Like, I just remember like her, like trying to be, like, hey, would this be okay with you? And him just being like, fuck no, like my friend, not your boyfriend. Like, like, and so, yeah, there was a while when it was like that. And it was just like, okay, well, he doesn't approve, but we're still doing it. So like,
Yeah, I mean, you guys are adults at that point. It was like,
yeah, exactly. And it was just like, we would love to hang out with you and like maybe go out and, cause I thought of it as like, dude, I mean, I don't know. I don't have, or now I have a younger sister. She's very young. She's 2 or 3. So, but
holy
if
crap,
at
that's
the
a
time,
huge gap.
yeah, it's a huge gap. But at the time, I didn't have experience of like having a younger sister, growing up with one, being protective over her. So I was like, dude, at least it's me, and it's not some douchebag you don't know. I don't know. Like there's a light or a fine, there's silver lining to it. But he in the beginning was like, no, that is not the way that I see it. It is. I'd rather it be a stranger. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I can get as far. I don't have any sisters. I only have brothers, but I could see. Like, I wouldn't say no, but it would definitely be weird.
mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that guy, my friend's banging my sister, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I acknowledge that. I did. I really did. I was like, dude, I don't want to take away from it. I just really like your sister. Like, I don't know what to say, like,
Yeah, and she likes you.
yeah. So, and so we're here now, and, we've been through a lot together, me and her brother. And we came out the other side, and yeah. So, although we live far apart now, we're in Texas, they're in California. I still, think of him as like a brother.
He's still in Palo Alto?
Yeah, he's still in Palo Alto, and her mom is also there. Her older sister is in Los Angeles. So, yeah. So, like I said, I mean, besides my own brothers, I consider him a brother. So,
Oh, you just don't know if he feels the same way.
I was a little joking, but yeah. I mean,
Sort of.
I hope I've never had a real conversation like, hey, dude, like, like I'm real close to you. Are you real close? Like, are we both in the same?
Let you
Are
write
we
him a
both in
letter.
the
Check
same?
this box if we're close.
Yeah, like, are we actually solid now? Because we haven't had that conversation. It just I think it just became this thing where it's like, I guess, they're actually together. She makes him happy. He makes her happy. It's either accept it or not, but to not accept it would be a little ridiculous at that point.
You guys are going to be brothers-in-law soon enough, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And he's obviously invited to the wedding. He's going to be my, doesn't know at this point, but would be my best man. So, or not my best man, whatever.
Oh, he's one of your groomsmen.
Groomsman. Yeah.
Okay. When you and your fiance finally got together, did you ever ask her, was she always interested in you? And she just trying to kind of like you did, you just put it on the back burner kind of thing?
Yeah. She claims I think if I have this right, hopefully she doesn't listen to this later and be like, "You fucking liar." But I'm almost positive that at the initial point that I thought of her like contemplating like, oh, she could be like I could definitely see myself like maybe like going out with her, or getting to know her in that way. I don't think she saw me like that initially. She was just like, she was like, I definitely like liked you as like, I thought you were a super good guy, like a funny person. Like I loved being around you. You were like literally became my best friend overnight, but I didn't initially think like, oh, I wonder like if we would work, like, like I wonder how I'd be dating him or whatever. So although I had that initial thought and I went into our conversation, our first one, like official conversation with that, like, I'm getting to know her. And then throughout getting to know her, I figured out that she had, the likes for someone else. And then I was like, okay, I got that now. But yeah, I think that we, it kind of maybe it formed later on, maybe when I was with, I have no idea when it officially might have formed. It could have been when I was with her friend. We always used to have this joke with each other, like, if there was a non-romantic soulmate, you would be it, kind of thing. Like we click, like we get along, like you come over, like I gave her a key to my place at the time.
Damn.
So she could like come in whenever she wanted. That didn't really make my girlfriend at the time very,
yeah.
very happy.
Oh my God.
Which was her friend. So, I got by, by just playing the like, oh, it's Catherine clause, like, Catherine just does what she does. She's very, she just works her way in. But yeah, so she had a key to my place. She would come hang out, spend the night on the floor in the living room, just like go to sleep. I'd leave her there, wake up, go to work, whatever. So she was very around and I liked it. It was a cool thing to have like a friend that was like, you didn't have to worry. I guess both of us didn't worry about being creepy with one another, I guess, because now I had a girlfriend and she was with someone else. So it was like, this is literally a friendship and it's all good, and then we eventually obviously became single. And then I don't, there was just this, we just had like a moment and it just was like, like, do I like you? And then it was just like reflected.
Let me ask you, because it seems that you guys were all going to the same boxing gym. The guy in charge of the boxing gym, did he never bring up, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to be going out with members and all that, because you could create the wrong kind of atmosphere, especially if things start going, Ari and wrong.
Yeah. It's funny. I listen to this podcast now, and one of the trainers on the podcast, out of three of them, when people ask him like, what's the number one thing that you suggest for a new coach to be? And his response is, don't fuck your clients. Like the number one thing, if you want to be successful, don't fuck your clients. But no, I mean, she was never my client. She was a member, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I think there is like in the professional atmosphere, you're probably most likely 99% not supposed to do that. I'm sure realistically, it probably happens a lot. Trainers getting with members or whatever, or vice versa, like members being interested in trainers, it can be that way too. But yeah, that atmosphere, that environment, it didn't mean it was right, but the trainers were sleazy as hell at that gym. Like I was a saint compared to these other motherfuckers. Like it was like these guys, I used to just be like, dude, really? Like you shouldn't be doing that, like, so this was my first occurrence. And obviously I even, I built a relationship before doing it. But yeah, I worked with a lot of guys, including the owner of the gym, who was just like, like, okay, you're a little sketch with what you do.
We don't have to name names, but I'm curious, like, what's a sleazy thing they would do? Because that was my experience when I was a trainer in the Philippines. A lot of the trainers were fucking sleaze bags, man.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to tell you like what I saw, but I'm curious.
Yeah. No, and I'd be interested for sure to see if they align. But yeah, I would say that the trainers that I was first like accustomed to working with were just like, they were very professional in front of everyone. Obviously, you can't continue to be in that position and not be, although I'm sure there's some exceptions to that. But they were just like, like you knew, I mean, you knew when they would, pull down their mic and be like, hey, like, like, and help instruct someone's form the way that they would, you just started to realize that like these guys were just like, you're being a little too obvious about it, or you're doing like more than one person in the same gym and they talk like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I was just like, logically, like this only can end in a bad way, and I just wouldn't risk my job over it. Like people like literally like, I don't know, like you could, some legal shit could happen, so I was just never a risk taker in that sense. It was always like a formal relationship with me. Like, oh, we're going to talk, we're going to hang out, whatever. It wasn't like, oh, we're just like going out and then we sleep together and then I don't talk to you anymore. Like I wasn't that type of person. So I didn't have to worry about that, but I knew guys that were like that. They just like slept with one girl and then, they're training, whatever, and they see a new girl and they sleep with that girl. And it's just like, yeah, I couldn't imagine.
Okay, so it almost kind of worked out that you and Catherine's her name, right?
Yeah, Catherine.
That you guys were just friends to begin with. Then.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, I'm just that was my personality type in high school. Like I don't think I even had, maybe, I don't know if I just lacked the confidence or the ability to be like that, like meet you in a random scenario and go home with you the same night. It was like, oh, like I'm get kind of like, I get to know you, like personality wise, whatever. And then whatever happens, whatever doesn't. But yeah, I've never been like a, go out, meet someone at a bar, bring them home that same night type of guy. So, even if I had intentions for her, like I said, when I first saw her, like, oh, she's really cute, I would never be like that type to be like, oh, you want to go out tonight? It was like, oh, like, like I genuinely would like help them with their form or help them with whatever and be really like, just like giving. And just like, whatever you need, just let me know with no bad intentions. Not like I'm trying to get in your pants. It was like, literally just like, if you need help, just let me know.
Even though you were already a little bit interested, you would still be like that.
Exactly. Even that way, I think I was always, because I'm even like that with people, obviously, clients that I'm not interested in, even to obviously to this day, men or women, it was just like, oh, like, let me know if you need some help. Like, so I didn't change for people that were more or less attractive. So I wasn't going to change for her in my approach.
What a good guy you are.
Yeah. It's but
if anything, you deserve a championship belt, man. You were able to get out of that friend zone. You did the impossible.
Yeah, that was fuck, dude. I mean, it wasn't like I was trying to crawl out of it, but yeah, like a lot of people have said, it's just like once you're in there, usually it's like it's a jail cell, you know. You're not finding the key anytime soon.
Yes, I mean, I rarely hear a story like yours where someone did get out of it. But I guess technically speaking, were you ever truly really in it because you had moved on? Usually the guys who get stuck in that don't move on and continue pining for that girl, right? Yeah,
and that could be it. That maybe, it could be a combination of like, I'm not interested in you technically and you're not interested in me technically, friends, which was totally the situation. It wasn't like one person chasing the other person. So that could have been it. It was like an unusual type of friendship where like you both acknowledged that you had relationships, but you were friends. So, yeah. And
you guys were what, 22, 23 at this time?
I want to say, I was like 22, 23 years old when I met her, and I'm now 29.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's an incredible amount of perspective and wisdom you were able to employ there at that age.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it wisdom.
Like I said,
that's giving me too much credit.
No, it absolutely is. Most guys don't realize, like, you can be trying too hard, especially with situations like that. The best thing to do is just move on, and if something's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, most guys wouldn't know that at that age, I don't think.
Yeah, and like I said, I feel bad sometimes when people maybe say something similar, but it really was like, it didn't feel like I had to do it that way. Like like I was choosing. I literally just didn't. It's almost like I didn't have a choice. It was just like the way that I operated, So like I said, it wasn't like I acknowledged there was like a route that I could have gone, but I chose the better one, and I'm just like patting myself on the back for it. But I literally just, it was just like, it happened. So, like I literally Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain,
No, I
but
get what you're saying. It was just, that was your default option. You didn't really have any other options. So,
yeah,
but
you know,
there's definitely guys who don't even realize that, though.
yeah,
I
exactly. No, I
knew a
get what you're
guy. I
saying.
knew a guy who
Yeah.
was like that. Who just kept going after the same girl, even though he never had a shot. But I wouldn't say in his defense. I mean, but she was a big part of that too. She kept stringing him along.
Yeah.
I used to tell him, you know what you are. You're basically every time she feels bad about herself, you're like her confidence, and like behind that emergency glass, she'll just break it and call you up,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna make her feel good about herself because
Mm-hmm.
you're totally in love with her, and then you don't have a fucking shot. She can go to you anytime she feels bad
Mm-hmm.
about it. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But he just kept going down the road. But I mean, I get what you're saying. You don't want to boast yourself up too much. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reality is you
Yeah.
did, and you made the better choice. Uh,
Yeah.
that's the thing
But
about women knowledge of that. But anyway, so the sleazy things that the trainers would do in the
yeah. How
Philippines
was it in the
is
Philippines?
because I don't know about here. I've never worked with personal trainers here, but in the Philippines, after you do a session with a client, you stretch them out, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where the stuff would happen. I would see these guys basically
Mating grounds.
just feeding up these girls and giving them massages. It's like massage is not part of the service we give,
Yeah.
And you could like I would watch him from behind, and you could see him just like caressing the girl's arms, and you could see like you could feel the energy from across the room. It's like it's not good, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were sleeping with them, but they would definitely be asking, dating them and
Mm-hmm.
going out with them. I'm just kind of like shaking my head at it. I was like,
Yeah. It's sticky. I mean, like I said, the boxing gym was a boxing gym, so it didn't have that corporate atmosphere. Like if that were to go down in like a Crunch Fitness or some shit, then it's like I'm sure there's like there's probably a tier of workers that is like looking down on you, like shaking their head, like, hey, we gotta have a sit down and talk. Some of the other trainers or other people are noticing what's going on, and like it's not a good look. But at this gym, like I said, it was a boxing gym. Like the fucking coaches were boxers, and boxers don't give a shit, like so it was kind of weird.
well, I'm just gonna change I'm getting a lot of reflection on the sun here real quick. I'm
Yeah,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
change it. Arian, do you have HBO Max?
I do. It is amazing.
Did you watch the Snyder Cut, the Justice League?
I did that. We were waiting for it. Like I remember, obviously it comes out in the morning. I think the day of all these movies do. The Godzilla one just came out. But yeah, we were like, we were stoked.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was amazing. I also starting the movie. I'm sure like maybe everyone else went through this. I can't imagine no one didn't. But we were like, first there was two things. 4 hours. We were like, fuck, 4 hours? Like, wow, this is gonna be cool. Like, because you almost like don't want a movie to end, and I always feel like superhero movies are too short. So we were like surprised about that, but also loving it. And then the second thing was we were trying to figure out how to get our fucking TV to display widescreen, and then didn't realize that I guess the director intentionally made it. Yeah. And so I had to Google that. I was like, after 20 minutes of trying on I was like, dude, do we have a broken, like, is our thing broken? Like, what's going on? And then we Googled it and we're like, like this is the way he wanted people to watch it. So yeah, I thought it was amazing. It was so well done.
So your girl was into it too?
She, with movies like that, like she'll sit there and be beside you, but she is not really all the way into it all the time. But me and my brother were just like, we're loving it. We grew up with comic books. Our dad kind of raised us on it. So we like almost like impatiently wait for every single comic book movie that comes out.
Did you like the first version of it, the Joss Whedon one? Did you enjoy that?
I thought it was literally fucking awful. Like
really?
It was so. I remember, and we saw it in the movie theaters. It was terrible. I remember looking at Superman's upper lip and being like, "What the fuck is that?" It was so odd. And then you find out after that, like, he couldn't shave his mustache because he was in Mission Impossible. So they had to CGI it off, but it was super shitty. I didn't understand it. And we were just like, what? Like, that was their competition for like the Avengers? Like, what? And so it was a shock. But when I heard about the Snyder Cut like months and months ago, I was like, please, I want to see the thing that I thought I was going to see,
That's the funny thing is, because I thought it was phenomenal as well. Like, we made a whole night out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my wife, Chris, we went over to our good friend's place, and we brought some chicken sandwiches over, because it's 4 hours. It was going to be a big deal. And we all loved it. But when I first heard about the Snyder Cut, I actually just wasn't interested at all. Because, I don't know, I kind of like soured on Zack Snyder after seeing Batman v Superman. I don't really think it was a good movie.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, and I could agree there too. I mean, obviously it's nice to see some action, but like in terms of the storyline, it was like, I mean, when you grow up reading comic books, or just like even watching the cartoon like 20 years ago on the TV on a Saturday, it's just like, this isn't really, I feel like I'm watching something different. And I understand the director has the ability to take it in a different direction, to surprise the audience. But I was just like, this movie is like, it felt like it just ended, like just the way it played out wasn't like what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, just like my problem with Batman v Superman was, and here you go, it's going to turn into like nerd rage.
Yeah.
No, but it's like, when Batman was just killing fools all over the place with guns, right? It's like that. That's like his unbreakable rule that he gives for himself. Because I'm a big comics guy too, right? He doesn't use guns and he doesn't kill. But like literally, that's all he does in Batman v Superman is just kill fools with guns, right?
Yeah, that's very true. And there was also just some corny moments. It's like, oh, both your mom's names are Martha, and that's why you're gonna stop fighting. It's like, fuck, dude. Like, come on.
And he just crams so much into it, and then you're gonna throw in Superman's death in here too, out of everything, and you're introducing Wonder Woman, and it's just like, it was too a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. But the one thing I do like about that movie is they finally got Batman's fighting style right.
And that's why I mentioned initially that, like, you enjoy the action. Obviously, the action scenes are fucking badass. But that was the first time, coming from like Batman Begins and Dark Knight, which were great in terms of storyline, fucking awesome, so well done. Not corny, super well thought out. But you just didn't get what you were maybe watching on the in the cartoons or whatever, where he was just so agile and so fucking
ever played any of the Arkham Batman games,
Uh-huh.
And then when I saw Batman v Superman, that first trailer when they showed him fighting, I was like, yes, that's
what I want to see. Yeah,
that's how he should be fighting. Yeah, So I love that about. But yeah, so after watching Batman v Superman, I was just kind of like turned off by like, oh, this guy's not really much of a storyteller. He's great at the visuals, he's great at the action. So when I heard that the Snyder Cut of Justice League was coming out, I was just like, how good can this thing possibly be? Of course, all the fanboys were super excited about it and everything. But as I saw more and more trailers are being put out, and like you were seeing more of the backstory of the Justice League, it was like, oh, hey, this actually might be interesting. And then when I heard it's 4 hours, it's like, it's almost a cultural event. Right? You can't miss it. I would watch it just for that. And boy, was I relieved that it turned out to be really good, because I'd forced, my friend Sam and stuff to watch it.
Yeah, you feel bad, because not everyone's into that stuff.
Yeah, for like 4 hours, I would just wasted their Friday night.
Yeah, it's like Lord of the Rings status,
Yeah. But I was just amazed at how much I loved it, because right away from the beginning of the movie, it was completely different.
So different. We kept looking at each other like, because we remember that we only watched the regular one once, but we remembered it because it was short and terrible.
Yeah, that horse shit on the rooftop with that jewelry burglar.
Yeah. So it was a good, like, we were amazed. We kept looking out over our shoulder at how many times like they left something out and just put a brief part of it in the original. It was like, we needed this, because the Avengers had like 15 or 20 fucking movies That's why they're so good at what they did. And you guys try to do it in like fucking 3.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. That's
so
always
it
been
didn't,
kind of my gripe with DC is like, why can't you guys just do one movie at a time like Marvel did and build up to a Batman v Superman, build up to the Justice League?
yeah.
But it just feels like they're trying to get in, on the cash that Avengers is just pulling in. But it's like, dude, they put out a bunch of solo movies before that first Avengers movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching the first Iron Man. You had no idea that it was going to be from that. And I'm sure, they said that they had the plan. I think when you listen to the directors and Fake, I think his name is something
Favreau.
Feige. Yeah.
Oh, Kevin
Uh,
Feige, the executive producer. Well, he's basically in
hmm
charge of Marvel Studios. Like, I'm deep into this, into
Yeah.
comic stuff, both just
hmm
comics and comic book movies. I'm all about it.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah, so they had a plan, and it was, I mean, they totally did so well with it. I'm so excited to see what happens in the next phase.
yeah, they bet it all on Iron Man. What's interesting is I kind of had the same reaction. I remember when I saw the poster, like the cardboard cutout for Iron Man in the movie theaters. I was just like, Iron Man? The fuck? They're gonna do Iron Man? Who gives a shit about Iron Man?
hmm
And then that first trailer came out with Robert Downey Jr. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely want to see this.
Yeah.
And it turned out
Yeah.
to be, it's like almost a perfect movie, in my opinion. And it just launched everything. And it's kind of interesting to think about it. Like, that movie doesn't work out. None of the other movies happen. Right? That was Marvel Studios' very first venture of having their own movie studio. They betted all on
hmm
that. And then because of that, everything else happened.
Yeah.
And,
It's absolutely crazy.
we kind of like take it for granted because you remember those first few Marvel solo movies, they would just tease like the Avengers Initiative, right? At the end credits.
Yeah. It
And
was like,
it,
oh, we're like forming a group or
yeah.
some shit,
And it
and you're just
just,
like, I know the group.
yeah, and it just like felt forever. It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
never going to happen. It's just
Yeah.
happening all the time. And we just kind of take it for granted now that, you had Captain America Civil War, had all the Avengers movies. Oh my God, we really are living in a golden age of comic book movies for any comic book fans.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, my dad is super ecstatic about it. Like I said, he grew up reading comic books and like collecting them. So like, yeah, to see that is because obviously there's renditions of Superman, The Flash, Batman in the 80s and 70s and whatever. But to see it to this degree is like, it's awesome.
So who did you grow up reading in terms of comics? Who's the comics?
We were always into, I guess, like the bigger ones. Like I just remember Spider-Man, Superman. But I remember like specific comics that were like, because like they were almost episodes of a TV show. Every comic like had a like, it was a theme or a person that Superman was fighting. And I remember the cool things were like, that's why when I was displeased with Doomsday being in Batman versus Superman, because in the comics it was like a 2-part thing. Like he came down and then he killed Superman, and then Superman was dead for that comic, and then in the next one he was like energy that came out and like got a new body and had a black suit and like came back and killed Doomsday. So that it was a big pivotal part of Superman's like whatever like story. And when they crammed it all into that movie, it was just like it kind of discredited all that. So yeah, it was really cool growing up with like seeing the comics, seeing the front cover, the like all black or the all silver, the chrome. They had special edition ones, and then yeah, it was just it. Yeah, so I never really read into like the Black Panther or like. I guess in the Avengers, they went into so much. I never even heard of like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I never read that comic book. So there's a lot that came out that I didn't even dive into. But it's so cool to see them like bring about like all these little characters you would have never even like maybe read unless you were just reading everything.
I mean, to be perfectly fair, no one in Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, that's so sure. But the story behind that is why they did that movie is, I think in the 80s when Marvel was really struggling, they were going
Mm-hmm.
near bankruptcy. Stan Lee saved the company by selling all the movie rights to most of their characters.
Uh huh.
So at that point, Guardians of the Galaxy was the only one they had left. It was like they really couldn't do anything else at that point.
Hmm.
And like they made that into like an awesome hit too. It's like Jesus, these guys can't do any wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing that. I had no backstory from that. Like I didn't do any research. I was just like, Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy looks cool. Fuck it. Let's just go see it, you know? And we were like, oh my God, like this is one of the, and it was like the first like really, really funny Marvel movie. So you were just like, oh, like they can also basically do comedy. Like it's a comedy, you know, like, and it's also super cool. It's like, they do, yeah, the writers for their scripts and their storylines are just like phenomenal. They got the right actors to play the parts.
But
And
the
it's
way they
just,
use like music, right? The way they
mhm,
use all that
yeah,
set,
his
this
playlist. Yeah.
this playlist, especially in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume Two.
Hmm.
That's probably one of my favorite
Yeah.
Not just Marvel movies, just movies of all time, especially the way it ends with him listening. Well, spoiler alert. I mean, if you haven't seen Guardians of the
Oh no,
Galaxy
I've seen
Volume,
everything.
I
Yeah.
know it's anyone who's watching it. Come on, it's been years and years since
Yeah.
it's come out. But at the end, when Yondu sacrifices himself, and then Peter Cole's just sitting there, and then he gets that. I think it's a Zune. It's like the competitor for the iPod, right? And he
Yeah.
starts listening to that Cat Stevens songs, and it's about a
Hmm.
father to a son. It's like, oh my God, they're just hitting all the right emotional points.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it's funny because I think my brother's definitely done it, and I know I do it from time to time. But like sometimes when I'm just feeling like nostalgic, or I just like you just don't know what to listen to. Is it rap? Is it this? Is it that? When you're working out, like I've used literally on Spotify, searched Guardians of the Galaxy playlist Volume 2 or Volume 1, and just listen to that while working out. Like it's that good,
yeah, it
you know.
is. It really is. Do you feel comfortable crying? I know it's kind of like the tangent, but crying at a movie.
I feel I hide it. I definitely hide it like 9 to 9.9 out of 10 times. I'll just be like, I'll kind of like do this type of thing, like, and wipe it away, try to wipe it away smooth. But yeah, I would say generally, and it's not even like more so, I guess, only time I can really remember maybe doing that is when you're in a movie theater, kind of, and it's really dark in there anyways, but you're only close to probably one or a couple other people, and you're kind of like maybe hiding it from them. But yeah, I've never been super open. It's funny because I'm open about like a man crying. Like I think it's like you have, like you got to, like if you it's been 10 years and you're someone who hasn't cried, man or woman, like there's probably something wrong with you. um but yeah, in movies it's like you almost don't want to be like, God, like what the fuck is going on, like, like it's like, am I that sensitive to this stuff? Like, can I just harden up for a second? It's just a movie, like.
But that's the whole point of movies, right? It's supposed to make you feel something.
Exactly. Yeah. When you think about the writers, like they're probably thinking like, I want you to feel what this guy is feeling. So it is, touche on their part.
But if you're watching a movie at home
Hmm.
and you're with your fiance, do you feel comfy crying?
No.
Really? Even in that
Yeah,
environment?
yeah. It's funny. Like I said, I'm super into like, getting, deep into the masculine and discovering the feminine, and trying to like, I read a lot on, meditation and the ego and, the child, the adult, all these different personalities and what they are, and these emotions and these feelings. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can't control your first instinct. And when you grow up knowing that like you shouldn't be crying, you're a dude, it's hard to shake that. Even though I know better, I know it's like, yeah, I can cry, dude. It's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think my initial thought, like you can't control your initial like reflex thought. It's just like, oh shit, like I shouldn't be doing this,
Does your girl ever get on you about it?
No. She's also very good at it. Like if she discovers like a tear, she'll be like, oh, like, like she's not very just like, why are you crying? And I try not to do that to her, in fairness. Like I think that it's also a two-way street. Like when guys are just like, why the fuck are you crying? Like it's a movie, like I know that, I've gone through it. So like if we catch each other, it's kind of just like, oh, you lean on them and you're just like, okay, it's okay. Like
It's a very supportive environment.
Yeah, not always. Like I said, you can. I just had a fight with her yesterday, so it's not always supportive.
I mean, that's always gonna happen because one thing, like
Yeah.
I've been with my wife for, let's see, if I'm 40 now, we're going on 15 years being together.
Wow.
And as much as we know each other and everything, there's this divide between the way women think and the way men think that will never
Hmm.
be crossed. We can. It's just we are just so different, and so just because of that, there's always going to be disagreements
Yeah.
occasionally. As long as a majority of the time it's not, and that's what you
Hmm.
look for. But yeah, I mean, that's just impossible. Like I've just come to accept that I'm never going to understand women 100%.
I mean, I can barely understand myself, so.
But the funny thing is, like, with the going back to the crying thing, is I used to be the same way because I grew up, especially like in an Asian household. It's not just about not crying; it's about not showing any emotion at all, right? But I don't know if I mentioned this when I was doing your guys' podcast. I was actually a stage actor for quite a while.
You were what?
A stage actor.
Oh yeah, yeah. You mentioned.
I'm so stupid. I never put my microphone over here, but you could hear me this whole time.
Yeah, I could hear you.
Oh, okay.
I'm now. There's a different clarity. I didn't even realize what I wasn't maybe hearing before, but you were clear before.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't put my mic on this whole time. Oh my god, that's so weird. So we just went right right into it. But no, yeah. So I was a stage actor. Well, people are gonna really love listening to this podcast.
Hey, if I need to hop on again, this was a great conversation. I'm willing.
No, that's fine. I can. There's stuff I can do. I'm just gonna actually have to edit the podcast and sweeten the
Yeah.
audio. It's like, oh my god, it amazes me that after all these years of doing video work, I could still make these simple, mass mistakes. And oh my god,
It's all right, dude. Hey, me and my we haven't been doing it for years, but I swear I'm still recording shit on Zoom, so I can't even edit.
oh my god. But anyway, so I was a stage actor for quite a few years there in my early 20s.
Hmm.
And people, the thing about acting is the way you reach those emotions, like crying, for instance, on call. It's not really about forcing it, but it's really more so just breaking down those barriers within yourself and getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
So that if you're just in the moment and you've been able to knock down those emotional barriers, the crying will happen because you're not stopping it, you're just letting it happen. But it takes a lot of work to break down those barriers and those walls. But what they don't tell you is even when you stop acting, those barriers stay down. Right? So I just think even when I stopped acting, I just found I just start crying all over the place now, especially like movies and everything. I just those barriers just stay down, and I just let it stay down because I feel like it's good for the soul. Honestly,
Totally.
a good cry.
I didn't even think about honestly that the acting process and what you don't think about. I mean, and that's the whole purpose, I guess, of a movie is like you get tricked into thinking that these people are these people, but yeah, I never had that perspective, but that must be so I can't imagine, but to you have to be open to every single emotion because you're displaying them.
Yeah.
And then
And you'd be surprised what comes out. I mean, there are times where, I'm just completely sobbing, on stage and I'm supposed to be, and it's genuine.
Yeah.
And that's when you feel like, oh yeah, I'm a fucking actor, man. I can do this.
Yeah.
But ever since then, I cry at movies, and like sometimes, the most surprising times too, like for some reason, like any like heavy battle scene that just gets to me. I don't know why, man. It's just people are putting their lives on the line, kind of thing. Like, oh man, in Avengers Endgame, when Cap is by himself there, then you just hear Sam saying "on your left," and all the heroes just start coming out. Oh, that gets me every time, dude. The tears start strolling down, and even just thinking about it, you could kind of like hear my voice, the energy kind of change and everything.
Changes,
there's just something about those moments where I don't know. It's just I don't know what it is about battle scenes like that. Just gets me. Like even you ever watch The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I love that movie.
Hmm.
I mean, who would have thought, the story of this white guy being one of the last samurais, right, would actually be an amazing movie. But it's one of my
Hmm.
favorite movies. And there's this scene in the movie where he's finally starting to settle in with the samurais, and they're putting on like this traditional stage show, and they get attacked by a bunch of ninjas who are trying to assassinate Ken Watanabe's character.
Hmm.
And then Tom Cruise ends up defending the family he's been staying with, and he's fighting back to back with Ken Watanabe. And like, I just find myself like being driven to tears by this. Is
Yeah.
I guess to me, it's just like there's nothing pure, right? Or he's just like genuinely fighting for his life, and it's just so in the moment, and the stakes are so high.
Hmm.
And I find myself just like being driven to tears, and my wife gives me shit about it all the time. It's, you fucking crybaby, what's wrong with you? And she knows, because we just fuck with each other all the time. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of relationship we have,
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just really interesting because before the whole acting thing, I grew up exactly the way you did. Like, it's like no crying at all. So
Hmm.
what kind of a guy are you? What kind of an Asian are you to show emotions? You're supposed to be a robot.
Hmm.
So but it's these days, yeah, I'm all about the cry. It's funny, I'm all about the crying, and because of my knee injury, I'm all about yoga now. I'm really headed towards a specific direction in terms of my evolution here. Went from the knife fighting to now doing yoga and talking about crying.
Hey, it's needed. I think early in life we do all the like, like, what do I need an umbrella? Put your shoulders up, kind of shit. Like, and then you start getting smart, and you're like, you know what? I don't want to be soaked. Like, yeah, give me an umbrella. Like, so yeah, we get a little smarter, I guess, throughout life.
Hopefully, right? If you're doing it right.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because sometimes, because I live in Hayward, and Hayward can't exactly claim to be the nicest neighborhood in the Bay Area, but every now and then I'll be driving around and I'll see these guys have got to be in their 40s already, and they're still dressed as if they're 18, 19, and I just kind of
Hmm.
like, they never really grew up.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I mean, that my, yeah, I feel like, I mean, people in my family, it's like you know a lot of people that are just like, oh, you didn't really learn the lessons you could have learned. We all have, equal opportunity to learn. Some people just decide not to, or they're not equipped with the tools. They're not in the right, mindset, or they're surrounded by people that don't allow them to grow in that way. Um, so yeah, definitely.
But let me, where do you draw the line? Because I do agree, like not being equipped with the tools. Like I said, growing up in an Asian household, I realized like all the social tools I was lacking, emotional tools I
Hmm.
was lacking, and we can't fight our programming, right? That's basically our default option, the way we grew up, like
Yeah.
you said. But at a certain point, as you get older, don't you kind of just have to take accountability for who you are? And then see you didn't have those tools. Well, shouldn't you develop them then
Hmm.
at a certain point?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm in total belief. I think that it would be nice if everyone followed that rule. That's just like, you're how old are you now? Like, you've been doing this thing for this long. It's obviously not the best way to live. It's a little toxic. Like, if you want to be funny about it, yeah, you're being a little toxic right now. Like, but in all reality, yeah, I there's a number of people I wish I could just be like, hey, like, it's about that time, that you like take, ownership for like who you have been, the way that you have been, so that you can be better. And it just, yeah, it's sad. It doesn't always work out that way. And yeah, it's just, it's, I can't really, I know that, like I said earlier, we even working with clients that like want to change something simple, like their work ethic, or their exercise behavior and all that stuff. It's like, it all comes full circle. It's like, it comes to commitment and awareness. It's like, where are you on this ladder of change? And if you're not up here, if you haven't even been able to like pre-contemplate or become aware of your situation and how fucked up you are in some regard, then how are you going to get to the prepping, for the change or the actual action? It's like, it's not going to become something that you're doing.
How about for yourself? What would you say are like the biggest things you've learned about yourself? I mean, you're 29, right?
Yeah, 29.
Yeah, wow, I mean, that's still a kid. I'm not trying to sound like I'm some wise old
No,
man.
no,
That's just,
I get it. Yeah, trust. And I look like I'm 19, so
I
it's
would have, I
it's
would have go that far, man. 'Cause you definitely look like a man, like,
that's nice because I constantly, if I'm with all three of my brothers, who both of them are younger than me, I'm the oldest. They're like, "You're the younger one, huh?" And I'm just like, "God, what the fuck, dude?"
but you know
Um,
what? 10 years from now, you're gonna love that.
yeah, well, yeah. I'm glad. Like I said, it's nice. But yeah, I'm young. I admit that for sure.
But yeah, what would you say? Because you've been through a lot in your life already, at 29. And, when you go through a lot, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I've been in. I wouldn't have asked for any of it, but I always look back and I try to have that perspective on it, which is that, like, you know, um, it was rough, and there was a lot of times when I was a kid when like I said, I wasn't, sitting here like, oh, this is all happening for me, like, and so, I think I cried wolf a lot, and I definitely just like was like, dude, why, like, fuck, like, can I just get a break? But yeah, I wouldn't take it back, and I think that being 29 years old, and I think people used to reflect on like friendships with me and be like, oh, you're kind of an old soul type of person. So it goes hand in hand, and maybe why I am how I am now and who I am. And yeah, it creates character, and it just, yeah, I think even to put like personal context to it, growing up with maybe other men, or my brothers, my dad, who like don't display the same amount of growth sometimes, it's, it fuels you, or it can. It's like that story of like the dad who's an alcoholic and has two sons, and one of them is alcoholic and says, I'm an alcoholic because he was, and the other one who's not an alcoholic says, I'm not an alcoholic because he was. So like you there's obviously every possible outcome to a scenario where you're passing on like from lineage that isn't as well equipped or doesn't know how to be a better person or think about things differently with an open mind or whatever. But I'd like to think that I'm trying to like break that, and be the official first like different link in the chain.
Ah, that's interesting. What are like some of the, like I said, what are just some of the big lessons or truths you've learned about yourself?
That although I'm in a setting where I'm constantly telling other people what they might need to do to change, it's always harder to change yourself, and but you're always somehow more, you're in more belief that you can change someone else. Having gone through trying to change myself, I realized, I think every day I try to remind myself that, it kind of lends a little bit more, grace towards other people and their situations when you know that, you're not perfect, or I'm not perfect, and we're all just trying to like maybe be better versions of ourselves. But yeah, I would say that I've learned that I'm not naturally a patient person, but I expect patience from other people. So I think that's a big lesson, that like, you need to learn to like, either one, you just don't be a hypocrite. So if you have a problem, don't expect other people to like treat you without that problem or in some way or another. And number two, you can also, you can start changing maybe that problem in yourself, or that issue, that deficit, whatever that is. So I think that's the thing I've tried to work on with my clients, with myself, is just being more patient with the change that's happening.
Nice, man. I think, for me, I mean, I pretty much know what my weaknesses are at this point. Like, a big weakness for me is asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and that's kind of, in terms of, I don't know if it applies to personal training, but in terms of to filmmaking and videography career, a big part of, gaining success is actually asking for help, as networking with other people. And because a lot of what we do oftentimes is, we'll be doing projects for clients, but it might not necessarily be the kind of projects we want to be doing. So a lot of times the way we build up our portfolio with the stuff that we actually want to do is we will do passion projects or specs. And then, of course, you're not making any money on that, but you collaborate with other people because it's very much a specialist industry, right? You have someone who specializes, the cinematographer, in just lighting and making a beautiful image, and you have someone who specializes in basically project management, the producer. So, it takes a village. But with me, where networking and asking for help is really my Achilles heel. That's kind of been the detriment to my career. That's kind of why I've kind of like flatlined in the middle, because I could never get over that hump of getting comfortable asking other people to, be a part of something I'm trying to do. And I know it's something that I should get over, but it's like you said, it's your programming. It's fucking hard to get over, man.
Definitely.
And how do you feel? Do you feel comfortable asking for help?
I would say in some scenarios or some situations, yes. And then, it depends on, I guess, my current state of mind. Like I know when I'm like really going through it, or I'm just not, you're kind of like leaning more towards like the ego. You're just like, no, fuck it. I can do it myself or whatever. And you always end up, in the end, or if you're lucky, being like, I was wrong, like I need some help, if you tried it first and it didn't actualize or become something you thought it was going to be. So I want to say that I definitely learned that lesson. I still learn that lesson on a daily basis. Because I'll still take a whack at it and be like, let's see if I can just do this by myself, but luckily, like I said, I can in most cases come out the other side and be like, I didn't succeed and I kind of need some help. But it definitely is. It's not a natural instinct.
So what would you say has attributed towards your success of being a personal, because you've been at it for, you said, 8 or 9 years now, right? I imagine the turnover rates for personal trainers is probably pretty high.
Yeah. I think that it's been a long time when I take a step back and I look at my whole career, but it just feels like sometimes you just like blink and I still feel like I never like to use the term expert, but I know a lot of people who are like 10 years into something, they're like, I think I'm going to claim I'm an expert now, like I'm an expert coach, strength conditioning coach or whatever. I'm like, I, on a daily basis, try to learn something new. I can't really identify with coaches that just sit back and just relax on their initial degree or their initial education, because we're constantly learning new shit about, like, foam roller 5 years ago broke up scar tissue. Now it's like something you shouldn't waste a lot of your time on because it's only doing this or helping circulate. There's like every year there's something new. So we're in an industry where, like, if you're not learning, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're not helping other people get to where they want to be. So it's almost a disservice to like not catch up with that. So yeah, I think that, it's, in hindsight, it has been a very long road, but I'm thankful that, and sometimes I look back on it, it's almost a little cringeworthy. Like, I'm like, I can't believe I used to do that, or can't believe I used to do that. So yeah, I'm thankful for the entire thing, but it has been definitely a learning curve for sure.
So what's something that you would cringe at that you used to have your clients do, or you used to do yourself?
I luckily enough, when I started training and coaching other people, I learned from the coach who was my mentor, and he was already not a person who was like, oh, let's get you to throw up, like, today's the day, you came in, you're going to wish you didn't, so I didn't start out as a trainer like that. Thank God. I knew there had to be a why. I knew there was like a better way, but I didn't always have the answers. like I knew early on that I kind of just did shit because that's how people did shit with me. You know, like that's how I was coached. So I'm going to coach you this way. And I saw results. So hopefully you will. But yeah, so I think the cringe-worthy part was just like kind of giving exercise just to give exercise and not knowing why in the very beginning. But claiming maybe back then, because every trainer, like I think that's a thing that you have to get over when you're a trainer, especially early on, is like knowing when to say I don't know. Like, oh, I don't know, but I'll look it up and I'll get back to you.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a big lesson I had to learn too.
Yeah. And I can recall more than a few moments, and I would be happy to apologize to those people if I saw them again, to, you know, where I was like, oh yeah, you know, it's because of this. And I was totally just making shit up, you know? So if someone were to, you know, my past kind of helping me revisit a situation like that and looking at it, I'd just be like, oh God, like why don't do it? You know, just don't say that.
Yeah, that's a huge one, and being able to admit when you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think for me that goes hand in hand with asking for help, because that's gotten me in so much trouble on shoots before, where someone will ask me to do something and I don't know how to do it, but I won't say it. It's like, oh great, now they fucking think I could do this thing, and I'm even in a worse situation now. It's like, nice going, Mike. You know, you never really learn. And that's, I don't know, what is it about admitting that you don't know something that's just so difficult?
Yeah. I mean, it takes away, I guess, from being, you know, you like to think that like, oh, I've been doing this for this long, I should know what I'm doing, you know, and they also look at me like I know what I'm doing, so I have to know what I'm doing. So yeah, it kind of, you start to, I think there's a quote that it's like, you don't see yourself, through your eyes, you see yourself through, or you think about yourself thinking about like almost how they think about you. So basically it's like, you don't see you see how how you think they see you. And so it's kind of this complicated thing when you're trying to coach someone or you're trying to do your job and someone asks you something. And I'm sure even in the videography world of just like, they're asking me, so I should know. So I'm going to say I do, you know, like, and it gets you in so much more shit than just, you know, saying. It's almost like you don't even realize that it's an option to be like, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I really don't know how to do that. But yeah, you just don't think about it.
It's like admitting you don't know. There's actually a confidence and security that comes with admitting that, versus where you think it's the exact opposite, right? You think if you pretend that you know, you're exuding more confidence, but it's actually the other way around.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that, like I said, if I could go back, I know I've learned obviously how to be who I am now and how to approach those situations because of those situations. But damn, like it is hard. If someone was like, yep, you can either change this or you can let it play on the same way, you know, I would be tempted to be like, please, you know, I want to tell them that I don't know, you know, early on. But, and that's what drives me now to know more shit, is like really to be in a situation, hopefully, where I can either give them what they need or admit that I don't have it.
All right, Arian, I think this is a good place to end. It is 12 p.m. We've been at this for 2 hours now. I don't know if you saw me look to my right here, but that was my wife telling me that lunch is ready. So I was like, oh, okay.
Good. Hey, I'm glad.
Yeah, but this is a blast, man. Thank you so much for doing this. So if people do want to find out more about you and your personal training, where should they go?
I would say that I think across the board, it's all my same tag name or name on most social media accounts is Jas Performance Health. Although on Instagram it is like Jas_Performance Health. But if you just Google that, you could find my webpage and you'll find a link tree that has all my stuff on there. So yeah, Jas Performance Health. You know, I do coaching, all the above, behavior. You know, neuroscience is my new thing, neurology. So I'm been at that for about 2 years, and that's my focus now, is kind of relating the body to the brain and trying to get a holistic
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to ask you about that. So I remember.
It's like I said, it was a nice break away from that. And sometimes I feel like all of my other conversations go down that route. So it's nice.
Because I am interested just to know how that works, as I don't know anything about that. And I wanted to ask about that, about you and Miles, when I was on your guys' podcast. I was like, I don't want to interview you guys on your own podcast. Because, I do find that fascinating. I don't know anything about it. So here I am admitting I don't know. You see how far I've come?
Yeah, look at that. Full circle.
All right. So what we'll do for your intro, because you know how I like to do a unique video intro for everyone, is since obviously I can't be there in person to shoot you, what I'm doing is I'm doing these kind of like animated intros for people now. So basically, I'll send you an email of what I need from you. And basically, I'll need like 10 pictures for you, which I'm going to make into like a nice animation.
Okay.
And then I'll just email you that. So look out for that email. But anyway, thanks again, man. Had a blast, dude.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I'll definitely have you back on again, and maybe next time I'll have the mic in front of me the whole time.
Hey, I'm sorry I didn't notice it. I don't know why.
So you could actually hear what I was saying fairly well.
I could, obviously, very well. Like I think I'm used to, like I said, being with clients, and that's just the they don't have mics, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, hopefully it turned out okay, and I don't have to do too much audio editing that.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fine.
All right, man. You take care, dude.
All right, thanks, man.